Well, welcome to Blake 7 The Way Back. I'm Philip.
I'm Dwayne.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Todd.
And we'd love to welcome you to our first episode, Blake 7 The Way Back. And we're looking at the episode, The Way Back. The Way Back was first broadcast in the UK on the 2nd of January, 1978. So over 47 years ago. It was written by Terry Nation and directed by Michael E. Briant, who will also be our guest today. And it had an opening ratings of 7.4 million viewers, which today any program would love to get. As we are recording this in Australia, it was first broadcast here in March 1979, a little over a year after the UK. So, first question I want to ask you gentlemen is, when do you first remember seeing The Way Back? Dwayne?
Well, for me, it was, the edited version on the compilation called The Beginning, which was released on video first, I think in the late 80s. I think it might have been released in the UK in 1985 originally, but that's when I saw it. It was around 1990, somewhere around that time. And I think the first time I saw the actual complete episode without the edits was on UK TV in the mid-90s. I think they screened it on there. So we had Katie Manning doing all the linking stuff for all the UK TV shows, and so it was lovely hearing her voice. But yeah, I reckon that's where I first saw this episode in its entirety.
Chris?
January this year. I don't have the exact date, but it was a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday afternoon, and I had the Blu-ray DVD that I bought and had delivered last year. So that is when I first saw it, yeah.
Todd, when did you first see it?
I think I first saw it from the DVD release in 2003, if that's when those box sets came out. I have no recollection of seeing it prior to that.
Yep. So I first saw it on the VHS, the compendium episode called The Beginning. So I would only have seen about 20 minutes because I think they cut out most of the episode was cut out. I started watching Blake 7 from season C. It did repeat back to A and B, but I actually missed the first episode. So when I realised Blake 7 was back on TV, I'd missed The Way Back. I did manage to see Spacefall on TV, but I'd missed The Way Back. So my first experience was the 20-minute version, which was September 85. And then the first time I would have seen it in full, I don't think it was on, now you've mentioned UK TV, I'm not sure. But I think it was, the first time I saw it would have been when they released the twin packs of VH episodes, which was started in the UK in January 1991. I think Australia was about 4 months after the UK with them coming out. So 1991 would have probably been the first time I saw it in full. Now, we've all watched it very recently, so just once again, I might start with Todd this time. Todd, what's your impression of this episode, The Way Back?
Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed watching it. It's interesting seeing the production values from that time, and it's interesting seeing it again because I didn't realize that's sort of how everything started.
Again, yeah, I really liked it. I thought it was well paced, and I thought they told the story really well. It was the first time I'd seen it in January, so I've had no recollection before that. But I thought it was a really well paced episode for a beginning of a series.
I've been watching the Blu-ray editions with the new special effects, which I really love. And it's so dark. It's such a dark concept. You know, you get the production values of Doctor Who at the same time. It looks like a Doctor Who set. But you got all these dark issues going on all the way through the episode. Some really heavy stuff, which no doubt we'll talk about when we get into the episode. But enjoying watching it for this review because, you know, paying closer than the usual attention, getting heaps out of it, absolutely loving it.
I think this is an amazing piece of television that still stands up today. Even though it was made 47 years ago, it is perfectly watchable for an audience today. The themes are just as relevant, the ideas are just as relevant. This is almost a perfect piece of television. Actually, at the end of the episode, I may actually ask you all to give it a score. We may actually score all these episodes as we go, and at the end of the season, we'll work out what our group ranking is. But let me know. I'll give you a clue sort of way. This will be a 10 out of 10 for me. That yes, there's some faults, yes, there's some problems, but in terms of the best of Blake 7, This is a 10 for me. There's only going to be a few 10s per season. Some maybe not even that many. This for me is perfect viewing. Absolutely fantastic. So before we actually analyze the show and talk in a bit more depth, firstly, if you haven't watched the episode, I'd encourage you to go watch it. But as Chris mentioned, the first time he saw this was in January, because I asked Chris to watch each episode, which he's never done before. He knew nothing about the show. And so I recorded, Chris and I talked together before he watched each episode, and then straight after he watched each episode. And so we're going to cut to that now and go back in time to when Chris first watched his first episode. So let's go back and watch what Chris was expecting and what he thought back then. Tell us a little bit about your history with Blake Seven.
I heard about it in Doctor Who magazine once, and that is my history with Blake Seven. I have never seen.
You've never seen it, never watched an episode?
Never seen it.
Do you know anything at all about what it's about?
Well, look, I've gathered things over time. So the very first time I ever heard about it was, like I said, in Doctor Who magazine, and I'm like, what is this Blake Seven? I've never heard of it. And then all I ever saw was pictures in magazines. I never saw it on TV. I never saw it advertised. And then I guess when I started listening to your show and going to Doctor Who conventions, I'd hear about Blake Seven. So I didn't know. I've picked up that it's a space show. I think Blake is now the captain of a ship, whereas before I didn't know if Blake Seven was actually a ship's name, like the Enterprise, or whether Blake was a captain and he had 7 crew members, or he had 7 ships. I don't know. So I'm guessing that he's a captain, and he's got 7 people that he deals with. And I think there's a war. That's all I know. That's all I can gather. And it's in this, and I know that it is in the style of Doctor Who in the 70s, with when John Pertwee and Tom Baker were in the series, and it would have that kind of feel to it, like a lot of studios setups and things like that. So that's what I'm expecting. I have also heard that it's kind of bleak, and it's not, there's not a lot of happy moments in it, I'm gathering. So I'm not expecting I'm expecting an exciting series, I guess, but not one that's full of happy moments. So I'm getting a lot of people dying and things like that is what I'm expecting.
Okay, so you're about to watch episode 1 for the first time.
First time ever, yes. First time ever.
Okay, now you've got the Blu-ray set for season 1.
I do. I've got the Blu-ray one that just came out a couple of months ago. It's still sealed, so I'm going to have to take it out of the package. But yeah, I'm just about to put it on and watch it.
Fantastic. So now don't watch any of the special features until we get to the end of the season, because I don't want any spoilers. The aim is for you to get through season 1 unspoiled.
No, I'm going to watch it as it was broadcast, as it was with those special effects. Yeah.
Okay, so have you got any expectations for what you're going to see in the first episode? Any predictions?
No, I honestly, I really have no idea. I've absolutely not a clue. I'm guessing a war or some kind of conflict in space. But other than that, honestly, I've no idea what to expect.
Fantastic. Well, listen, off you go. Watch episode 1, and we will be back here in no time to talk about how you found episode 1.
Okay, great. Looking forward to it.
So, Chris, you've just watched your first episode of Blake 7. What's your first impressions?
Wow. So yeah, I was I was a bit worried I wasn't going to like it, because you've revved it up quite a bit, and I know it's your favorite show. So I thought, oh god, what happens if I hate it? But I actually didn't hate it. I actually quite enjoyed it. It wasn't. It was quite bleak. I was quite surprised in some bits how accurate they were in today's. Like they were doing deep fake AI videos back then in 1977, which they're doing right now. Yeah, with his brother and sister and stuff. So that kind of struck me as like, wow, that's very now. That's what's happening now. So
the judging machine was all AI as well.
Yeah, yeah.
I had been a while since I watched the episode. I've just watched it with you as well. It's been a while since I watched the episode. A few things like that went, oh heck, it really is today.
Yes, that really struck me quite a bit. It took me a second to figure out what that justice machine was. Actually, I didn't realise what they were doing. Took me a second. I do quite like the mixture of technology, their thoughts on what technology is going to be in the future. That kind of struck me as well. I do like the old 1970s sets that they used to do with the BBC. They do take me back. I noticed the Doctor Who actors. There was I think only one actor from Doctor Who in this episode that I recognised. Anyway, guy from Dev. What was his name? Dev
Tarrant.
Tarrant. Yeah, he was in Revenge of the Cybermen.
Yes, you should have recognised Michael Keating too, though. Villa.
Michael. Which one was he? Sorry.
From the Sunmakers.
No.
Villa.
Oh,
the thief.
Right. Okay. No, I didn't recognise him.
He's from the Sunmakers.
But I did recognise Foster actually.
Brown Foster. Yep.
When he first came on, he struck me, and I thought, God, he looks familiar. He looks like an American president. So I had to look it up, and he played the American president in Superman 4, and he was in Superman 3 as well. So I recognised him from those. Very interesting. I'm actually kind of looking forward to the next episode because it was just one bad luck after another for him, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he gets back now. Was that the female was called Jenna? Is that right? It was hard for me to catch their name sometimes. She was.
No, that's fine.
She was.
You'll get used to it as we go. That's Jenna. Yes.
Yeah, and she's played by Sally. I can't say her surname. Nivette. Right. Yes. Okay. She looked familiar to me as well, but it might just be that I've seen photos of her from Blake 7 pictures. I think I don't know. I'm not sure, but she did look familiar to me.
She's done a lot of stuff, but I mean, the UK viewers would know probably from of our age from Emmerdale. She was.
I did notice she. I didn't. Oh, was she?
Fraser Hunt's wife in Emmerdale for several years.
Right. Okay. Wow. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. No, I did notice that she'd been in Emmerdale. So yeah.
So
no.
More about the story in terms of the plot, in terms of the story, in terms of the pacing.
Well, I wasn't expecting that. I hadn't expected that his mind had been wiped. So that I found quite interesting. I really enjoyed the way they showed him remembering stuff. I thought they did that really well, and repeating it over and over. I quite enjoyed that, and that was quite clear on what was happening. Their government is quite corrupt, isn't it? That struck me as well. Yes. So I was kind of like,
because you realise the very first shot you see after the titles, we should talk about the titles a moment. After the titles, the first shot, what's the first thing you see? A security camera.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Okay. Yes. Yeah. There was. I did note. Yes. Yes, okay.
The very first thing you see is a security camera, and then Dudley Simpson's score comes in, which is just kind of relaxation music. Yeah. And then you notice people sort of wandering around, a bit like zombies.
I didn't get the zombie bit. I didn't think I thought they were just walking around, actually, to be honest. I didn't get the zombie. It wasn't until she started talking about how, it should have started wearing off by now, that I'm like, oh, okay, so they must be drugging the people with food and water.
Next time you go back, have a look at all the extras. And the extras are just walking around and they just bump into people because they're just in a drug, just very relaxed. So one of the things you'll see is that the higher up you go, the less your water gets drugged and your food gets drugged. So the high functioning people, they're not drugged, but the lower class people, they're more highly drugged to keep them passive. Yeah.
I didn't like the woman. Well, I liked the way she played her, actually. I liked the fact that I didn't like her. I thought that the woman who sort of orchestrated the whole thing about with the children.
The prosecutor?
Yeah, I couldn't remember it. I couldn't catch her name, actually. But I liked not liking her. I thought I hope she gets some comeuppance. What else can I say? It's interesting watching how each event, they're sort of trying to mould each event into making him look guilty of something. And then I liked the way that the last shot was that they had gotten rid of his lawyer and was it his girlfriend or secretary or something? Wife, yeah. I liked how they didn't actually show them killing him. It was just they're dead now and that's it. And he's looking back at the earth, not knowing that they're gone and his evidence is all gone with them. So that was I quite liked the way they have set it out and the way they filmed it. There's also a bit times the camera was a bit wobbly when he was meant to be in an induced when he was trying to come out of the induced state, when he was in the cell. That was quite good. I thought that was quite effective as well.
Any final views in terms of any final comments about the first episode you've watched?
I'm looking forward to watching it again and seeing where they have put the special effects and changed it. I think the massacre will be quite different. I think the gunshots is going to be one of the things they change. And possibly the landscape when they're outside. With that, I think they've sort of done a cut screen where it looks like the big domes over the top and they're in the forest. I reckon they might have changed that.
But all of you enjoyed the first episode.
I actually did. Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was a lot different to what I was expecting. I thought there'd be a lot more action, but it's kind of set it up quite nicely. I'm assuming the next episode will be him arriving on the planet, on the colony, and sort of finding out he's Seven. I still don't know who his Seven are.
Let's wait and see. Great. Anyhow, first episode done. Thanks, Chris. We'll talk to you before you watch the second episode.
All right, great. Talk to you then.
Well, that's what Chris was saying back in January. Quite a few months have passed since then, and so I'm looking forward to seeing what he thinks now, having had a few more months to think about it and having watched it a few more times. But let's actually get into the actual episode itself. Dwayne, what was your impression of the title sequence?
Well, it was unusual. I remember my initial impression was that I wasn't overly blown away by it. I didn't find it because they've updated it slightly with the new special effects version, but it just looked very cartoony, very animated. I wasn't a huge fan of the title music at the time, but I've grown to love it over time. Absolutely. So when I first went into it, wasn't quite what I was expecting, but I certainly love what it's doing. It tells the story all the way through that title sequence. What good title sequences do, I guess, especially for that period.
I really like the theme tune. I think Dudley Simpson's done a wonderful job, and it's something that instantly I just sort of recognise, oh, that's Blake Seven. The sequence of actions going on, I think some of it looks better than others, and I finally worked out where that dome thing is from in the opening titles. Having watched this episode, I went, oh my goodness, that's from this episode. I just didn't even realise. And I guess with the logo, I would have liked an apostrophe S, I think, but we don't get that, do we?
Dudley Simpson, as many Doctor Who people know, scored most of Doctor Who for the first 19 years of the show, I guess. He was given a full orchestra to work with, and for the first time the theme song, because of course Dudley Simpson didn't get to write the Doctor Who theme song. That was Ron Grainer. What is it that stands out about the theme song that you think is impressive, Todd?
Oh, I just love the fanfare of it, really. Just the way it all starts, and then those zoom. Just at the end when it comes up with the credits, who wrote it and all that, it just sort of leads you into it. That's what I like.
Yep. And do you feel it sets the scene?
I haven't really thought about that. I guess when you look at the various elements in there, you've got your spaceship, you've got Blake, going to eliminate Blake and that sort of thing. So, yeah, I think it does. Yeah.
I'll probably be controversial here, but I don't like it. The sequences are actually quite good. I do wonder how they would have. I'm looking at it in 5 HD or whatever it is, HD, and I'm just wondering how it would have been back then, seeing all those blurry pictures. I can't imagine it would have been that good. I just don't think the music fits the show. I just think it's grandeur and noble and sort of brassy, and the show's gritty and dark, and it seems more that's a song that the Federation would use rather than what Blake's band of misfits would use. I don't know. To me, it doesn't fit, and I have to admit, I fast forward through it, and I don't fast forward through many opening titles. But I just don't like it.
No, it's one of the things that, of course, when they did the theme song and they did the opening credits, they didn't really know where the show was going to go, or that they had a handful of scripts already done, but they wouldn't have actually produced many yet. So they're having to guess where they think the show's going to go. But personally, I love the music. I love that huge orchestral stuff. I think it's a great opening, and certainly as soon as it comes on, you know what the show is. So whether it fits the show or not, like the Doctor Who theme, you immediately know this is Blake Seven. Dwayne?
A name that jumped out at me was the graphics designer for Series 1, who no doubt worked on the graphics for the title sequence as well, I think. Pretty sure, Bob Blagden. And the reason he stood out to me was because not only is he a graphics designer, but he was a director. And he was one of the directors on The Tripods, which I'm a huge fan of as well. So I was curious to see what else Bob had done. He'd worked as a director and done several episodes of Monty Python's Flying Circus. So he'd been around for a little while. He directed episodes of All Creatures, Great and Small. And in 1978, I saw that he won a BAFTA for Best Graphics in 1978. I wonder if it was for Blake 7. I couldn't see a reference to whether it was for Blake 7 or not, but I'm assuming it was, if that's what he was working on at the time.
Well, I want to have a look at the way back the episode. Let's look at it in 3 sections. The first section I want to look at is the story of Blake. What do people take from the show in terms of what stood out for them?
Well, I was really surprised. I know watching it the first time, 25 years ago, that he was, a prisoner, that he was already, his mind had been altered, and he was already an insurrectionist, really. Because I came into it thinking that he would already have his band of people together and that they were going to be fighting the Federation or fighting whatever, and on a spaceship. So my preconceptions, like when it was like, oh, okay, so this is where we're going with this. He's having to be brought in and be re-educated, and then, what happens to him. I was really quite surprised.
What's the first thing that the director shows you when you leave the credits?
The security camera.
Security camera. And so immediately you know there's something wrong with this world.
Which is also the first image in the theme song as well that they use. It's the first graphic. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and so the whole being watched, you immediately know something's wrong with this world. And then not that all the extras are great actors, but just the fact that the way they're stumbling around, the way they're vagued out, that something's going on with these people.
Do you? I actually sat there going, oh, look, they're wearing costumes from Doctor Who the previous year from the Sunmakers, and they're just stumbling about, and we've got some stuck on sign, I think it says L37 on the wall, and we've got 70s flares. I guess I just look at it from that perspective. So I just thought, oh, they're just mass workers. Like, I didn't really think that they were in a state of being zombies or anything like that. I just thought they were the workforce.
The dialogue indicates the drugging pretty quickly. So even if you don't notice what's going on in the background, the dialogue lets you on. But the music that was going on, Dudley's music, straight away, plus the mention of the suppressants in the food and the air, it gave me a sort of a Logan's Run vibe, which I think was a little bit earlier than this, particularly the Michael York movie, where everyone was dosed with suppressants as well to keep them happy there in that story. So I was getting those vibes combined with people talking to Blake about his past life and he not being able to remember anything. It sets up the mystery really quickly, really well. It jam-packs a whole lot of different ideas in really fast. So I think it's really fast-paced, this opening section. And we get the first appearance of the very first Tarrant in the series. We get him pretty quick too, within the first couple of minutes.
I think one of the things that this show has always appealed to me is the dialogue. I think the dialogue is always very witty, very clever. And even with those opening minutes, there's a bit of a joke thrown out.
Well, since you were so insistent, I've done without food or drink for 36 hours.
How do you feel?
Hungry and thirsty, of course.
Nothing else.
And so just the very fact that there's humour being thrown in straight away, I think adds to the characterizations.
And that's the strength of Terry Nation. I think, being able to throw in humour into dark situations. And that's what I love from my science fiction, is that you've got humour within what's going on there. It was interesting that I felt that they had to go through this whole elaborate thing to open up the door, and then they had to go across a stream to get to the tunnels and all this, and thinking, oh, every time you meet, you have to go through this process? Like all the people that are going to meet regularly have to do all this? So I was kind of there going, imagine if that was done today. All of that opening sequences could be done within the first act before the opening credits, really.
Well, it was only some of the crowd. I noticed certain things for the first time, that it was when they got to the meeting place in the tunnels, they said they made reference to the outsiders as well, and there was a lot of people there dressed in kind of bohemian, with all the women with their head coverings and things like that, dressed in a different way to the city folk. So there were people living outside as well, which was fascinating. They never dwelt on that, but just a quick reference to it, which I thought was really interesting.
Well, I thought it was interesting too, Dwayne. Like, I kind of went, well, where's this coming from? Because I think they just sort of drop it. And how are these outsider people going to help with any insurrection if they're outside the city? Do you know what I mean? And you're not allowed outside. So I kind of thought that was a bit of a plot thread that was left hanging.
Not really clear whether about what the rebellion would look like, because they didn't want it to be armed or violent. So they didn't seem to have weapons. So how were they expecting and hoping to actually overthrow the Federation?
And really, it seems that they're made of Ravella and Ritchie, and then Foster and Tarrant, and everybody else is non-speaking extras.
On the subject of the guest cast, one of the first recognisable Doctor Who crossovers that we get is Robert Beattie, who plays. It's fascinating. It made me laugh looking through the credits of all the different sci-fi futuristic names that we've got. Varan, Glind, Altamora. Yeah, we've got all these fancy names, and Robert Beattie's character is called Brian Foster, of all things. One of the most common 20th century names you could possibly find. So I thought it was interesting that, you've got all these futuristic names, but you still got the old fashioned names as well crossing over. But yeah, it was interesting to see Robert Beattie, who of course played General Cutler in The 10th Planet. And
my mind was blown. I thought I'd recognize this guy, and until I looked it up myself, I went, oh my goodness, he's from the 10th Planet. Like, I just did not realize.
Totally different character, because almost looks like this. Is that his real hair? It looks like, because his hair is so different in The 10th Planet. He's actually a fascinating actor, actually. He did heaps of radio work over the years. He was in a radio production of 2001, A Space Odyssey, lots of different things. So he was very well known at that particular time. But for me, as a Doctor Who fan watching it for the first time, it was, oh, wow, General Cutler. There you go.
But for me, like as a Doctor Who fan, it was Jeremy Wilkin as Dev Tarrant, who played Kelman in Revenge of the Cybermen, who looks almost exactly the same as from 2 or 3 years previous. So he just stood out as, oh my goodness, him from Revenge of the Cybermen. I was watching with my husband Ash, who was not a Doctor Who fan, not a science fiction fan, not a Blake Seven fan, and he goes, "Oh, who's that person? He looks like that guy from Hey Dad, the dad from Hey Dad." Like, he's just, he's so creepy, and I kind of had to laugh considering what Blake gets charged with in the episode. Like, it was just this sort of coincidence, like he was going down that road with that character. But he always seems to play these sort of Weasley sort of characters that are going to betray you.
Yeah, start off good, but it turns out they're really the bad guy. Like, even in this episode, in Revenge, he didn't have a limp, of course, but in this he's got the limp to make him even more sympathetic to start with.
Which didn't work. As soon as I saw him, I knew he was going to be one of the bad guys.
I love Michael Bryant's direction too, because when he joins them, like, he's following them out to the meeting place, and when he joins them in the tunnels, and Foster is talking to Blake, trying to remind Blake of his past, the way he shoots Foster, he's got Tarrant in the background just watching, looking very, very suspicious in the background, like, he's definitely going to turn out to be the traitor. But I probably didn't pick up at the time. Yeah, he plays, even Tom Baker in the Tom Baker years, I remember him saying how good Jeremy Wilkin is. Like, he had this permanent snarl on his lip. So he does the traitor's characters really well.
I like Michael's direction of these first sequences. It's very Doctor Who-y in the fact that you have the videotape when you're inside and then you are on film when you're outside, but being able to use outside filming, being able to use tunnels, being able to have like a set with stairs coming down to it and that big door that you open, and also to all the sort of flashbacks that Blake has that gets repeated throughout the episode, with him running and then being tortured and that sort of thing. I think Michael finds a way to actually create action and drama and something interesting. And I think that's also prevalent in a lot of his Doctor Who's, because, you know, he directed things like Colony in Space, The Sea Devils, The Green Death, Death to the Daleks, Revenge of the Cybermen, The Robots of Death. And if you're a Doctor Who fan and you know those stories, not all of them are considered to be, you know, classic Doctor Who stories, but all of them are interesting, and he finds different ways to do things to, when a script is not, say, the best, to actually get action in there and to get, there's a lot of, you know, zooms in on people's eyes and mouths speaking to make interesting. Would you agree, Philip?
Yeah, I do. And the whole way he recounts, the Robert Beatty character, Foster, recounts Blake's history, that could have been very boring exposition. But the way it's done in terms of those close-ups, the way that the camera moves, the way the music is used, really actually gives life to that whole sequence. And there's many times that there's amazing life. And some of the zoom-in shots into eyes, into screaming mouths, makes it. This is already a very tonally dark episode, and the moments are made even darker. I guess part of here, what's made so dark too, is the two characters of Ravella and Richie, who, you know, we've met at the very beginning with Blake, have come to this area with him. We're still expecting Blake 7. We're expecting Blake to form a group of people, and this couple, who are a lovely couple who you get to know quite quickly and intimately, what's about to befall them is really quite shocking. What's people's impression in terms of this whole massacre scene, in terms of, you know, how it's filmed and what happens there? What do people think about it?
Oh, I have to laugh.
Some extra issues again, Todd?
The extras, they all get shot in the stomach, and half of them are like just running around, oh, and then sort of just kind of, oh, well, I'm just going to put myself down just gently, you know, some of them. But I'll give it to Michael. He's actually cutting between the guards, between the explosions with them. He's really trying to get the most out of that sequence, make it appear much more dramatic and action-packed. I mean, if you had a director like Pennant Roberts, he'd shoot it in wide shot, and you'd see the extras placing themselves down, and it would be really quite boring. But he really does his best to mask the ability of the extras to actually collapse when they're supposed to. But those actual explosions out of the chest, even in the main cast and in Foster, you know, I think are really quite dramatic compared to Doctor Who.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I did notice that, being used to Doctor Who and the violence in Doctor Who, it is turned up for Blake 7. I was surprised by that. I was surprised by the introduction of a lot of characters, and then they're just killed off. I wasn't expecting that. So the married couple, like you said, I thought they might come out, you know, they might be guest stars throughout the series or something like that, but then they were just killed. And that seems to happen quite a bit in Blake 7 as well. They introduce a character and then they're just gone.
Yeah, lots of quick cuts in that sequence. One thing that really impressed me with the direction was there was a scene where Blake was hiding. He'd gone for a walk and he was hiding behind some kind of blind, looked like a vent kind of thing. And the guard came across, and he could be clearly seen as a person from the other side, but he turned his head and you literally couldn't tell he was a person. It was really well done. So it was believable that the guard wouldn't have seen him. And all Blake did was turn his head, and just sort of really punched home how lucky he was in that sequence. I thought that was a brilliant piece of direction. The one thing about the massacre scene that made me chuckle a little bit was the makeup on Robert Beatty's mouth. The blood on his mouth was a little less than convincing for me, but it didn't take away too much from the drama of the scene. But it was just one little thing I noticed.
But I thought it was interesting that they put so much blood on there, Dwayne. Like it was like, oh my goodness, like really, that's the explosion out of his stomach has made him, like, you know, spew up all that blood.
It's a good thing they put so much down lighting on, so you could get such good shadows of the troopers as they were marching in there. I thought the shadow work was really excellent. It's interesting that the first time you actually see these guards, you already know it's bad news. I mean, we've not seen them before, they've not been mentioned, they've not been anything. But just by the presence, the music, and the way they were filmed, you knew this was bad. And in fact, I don't think no one talks at all, do they? They just come in and they just open fire and they're all dead. Like it's
Yep.
just so quick and graphic.
I think by having them totally masked is also very clever, right? Because you don't get to associate any facial expressions with them. And of course, you can cast whoever you want to underneath and use them however. And whether that was intentional right at the beginning, like we're going to do that, or whether they just, from the day one, or they decided during the production of this, they were just going to have them in that. I think it works really well to make them nameless soldiers of a greater entity, which is the Terran Federation.
And very noisy too. You could hear them coming a mile away when they, with the material going between their thighs, you can hear them coming. Very distinctive sound.
Anyhow, that ends the first section. Does anyone want to add anything else in terms of that first part of Blake 7 for the way back?
Well, I mean, just the fact that then Blake, comes back inside and is set upon by all those soldiers, that's certainly, I think, quite aggressive and violent. Like for the time and for the genre, it certainly sets itself apart from other shows saying we are an adult show and this is what's happening.
What time was this show aired back in the day? What time of the day? Like Doctor Who was 5:30, 6 o'clock, wasn't it, for dinner time? When was this aired?
I think it was about 8:30, maybe later.
Okay, so this was an adult show. This was, okay.
But didn't we get it here like at 6 o'clock?
So in the UK, Blake 7 showed at about 8 o'clock at night. In Australia, it showed at 8:20 after the two Ronnies. So the first series A was at 8:20, though the second series, or series B and C, they were on at 7:30 at night. So it's definitely an ad program.
Yeah, okay.
Now, Todd mentioned the direction. We've already been commenting on the job that Michael E. Briant did. Why don't we throw to Michael E. Briant? Dwayne and I had a conversation with Michael recently. Let's see what Michael had to say about coming to Blake 7 and filming this episode. Now, with The Way Back, you started filming that in October 1977 at Moreton Farley.
I just remember them as the tunnels near Bath. They were old. They were munitions. They built munitions in them for either World War I or World War II, or possibly both. I suspect World War II. It was a munitions factory. It was a munitions place, vast, with other built into a load of tunnels which already existed. But yeah.
So, being the first episode, was there a lot more budget for that, or did you all get the same budget for every episode?
Same budget for everything. We all got the same. We all got the same budget. Location filming probably wasn't a big problem for David as producer, running the finances of the show, because the show took over from a thing called Softly Softly Z Cars, which was a very, very successful piece. It was a follow-on to Z Cars, which became Softly Softly. It was a 50-minute show, same time slot as Blake 7 for drama series. So Softly Softly would have had location budgets for location filming, which would have been fine, because the actual cash element is paying for all the crew to stay in hotels or whatever it is, or getting to or from the location, and location fees, which frankly were never huge in those days. The location budget would probably have more or less fitted the Softly Softly budget. It wouldn't have been a big issue. Costume would have been an issue. Extras, probably not really. And the actors, not really, because the Softly Softly cast, of course, were all stars who have been doing it for 15 years, 18 years, however, since the set car days. So those actors would have been on very, very high, top-level BBC salaries, whereas all the guys coming in to do Blake 7, some of them had never done television, so never done much in the way of television. So they would have been on bottom rank. So the budget was basically okay, except there was no budget for visual effects. There was no budget for explosions, and there was no budget for costumes. No real budget for costumes, because whereas Softly, basically, you could go to John Lewis and get the stuff there or whatever, most of our costumes had to be made or made to hire. So that would have been expensive. The scenery, of course, would have been very expensive, very, very expensive, because whereas you can have a set like the back of my little apartment here, which you can see, that's quite cheap to put together because it's nice solid flats. But when you're doing futuristic stuff, that's a whole different ballpark. So that was expensive.
Had you worked with Robert Beatty before?
I think I might have done, but in the sort of way, way distant past. When I was as a PA, when I was working with all these very talented directors, I kept a little black book of all the actors that really, really impressed me. And when I saw actors on the screen, just watching telly at home, or in the theatre, or in the cinema, when I saw somebody who really impressed me, they would go into my little black book, which was one of those sort of A, B, C, D, F, G telephone directory books. It was there. I still got it somewhere. So I would just write their name in it. So Robert Beatty was a name which I had in the book as being, and he just felt absolutely right for it. I cast Robert, and I just thought he was right for it.
So you did a lot of
his fee, whatever that was, I bet wasn't whatever Jimmy Ellis was getting for Softly Softly.
You had a lot of casting in that first show because you had Gillian Bailey, Alan Butler, Jeremy Wilkin, Michael Hosley, Pippa Steele. It was a big cast of extras.
Yes.
Jeremy Wilkin, of course, you'd cast already in Doctor Who, in Revenge of the Cybermen. Did you like to work with the same actors regularly? So did you have a little company of actors you used to like?
Yeah, casting. There used to be a book called Spotlight in those days. I don't know. I think it probably exists on disc now or on screen, but
online.
You had male Spotlight and female Spotlight. So that was, you would spend a lot of time leafing through that. But as a director, I had actors that I really enjoyed working with. And when you've worked with somebody and you felt that you've liked their performance, actors bring their performance to you and they offer you their performance, their interpretation. That's why drama is so exciting, that as a director you see the way the show is, but the actor comes along and adds a plus to it. They add something more to it, the way they interpret the character. And as a director, you've got a right to accept their interpretation or not accept their interpretation or modify it or whatever. But it is very nice to work with people that you know you can rely on. So the rehearsal period actually isn't very long. 8 days. It's not really 8 days. It's like 6 days, 5 or 6 days for an hour show. So as a director, you like to work with people that you think are talented and that you know that you can work with and you know you can trust in and rely on, as well as bringing in some new people, which you get through leafing through Spotlight or from interviews or whatever. I would interview. I think I interviewed Gillian for that job. But an awful lot did come out of my little black casting book, I must admit.
I think Jeremy, he was a similar role to the role he played in Revenge of the Cybermen. And right. he was perfect as that villain. I can't imagine anyone else in that role, actually.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yes, I confess I had a rep of actors, if you like, and I always wanted to have another job offered to me to direct. So I would try to find the very best possible people I could to play the characters, because in the end, the most important thing in the world are the actors in a production. I mean, actors can make a bad script better. Good actors can make a bad script better. A good script can be utterly destroyed by bad actors. Ultimately, it's the actors. I mean, you must be very aware that in your show, the people, your fan base really, really want to see are the actors. That's who they're really interested in. They're not interested in the directors, they're not interested in the designers, they're not interested in the visual effects guys. Yes, they are, slightly. But it is your stars are the actors who are in Blake 7 if you can get them on your show. And that's what makes it sell. And it's the same for a drama director. It's the same for any director. It is the actors that are important.
Now, you talked about not much rehearsal. On location, what rehearsal did you get before location work?
None. Go in there and do it.
Okay.
I mean,
so,
on something like Blake 7, that's not really a problem because generally speaking, on location, you're doing the action stuff. On location, you're not doing long dialogue scenes where shades of emotion are addressed. You're doing stuff that you can't really do in the studio, or you're doing stuff which is enhancing visually the production. So yes, of course it would be better to have, but frankly, the amount of dialogue that there is on location in episode 1 is very small, if you think about it.
Though I guess, the reason why I mentioned Ron Beatty before is he's only in that one location scene. It's a very powerful speech he does to Blake in terms of explaining about Blake's background, and he just pulls that off brilliantly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is why you want to cast a really solid, reliable actor where you're going to believe everything he says, and he's going to do a bit of homework he's going to learn the Dicky Birds and say it with conviction. Mm-hmm. That wasn't an emotional interchange. I'm not defending what I say, but that wasn't an emotional interchange. That was him delivering a speech to a crowd. So there is, if you're an intelligent, bright, smart, clever, experienced actor like Robert, then you know that you're just delivering this speech, just that you are delivering a speech. So there is a way of doing that.
So your location work took place at the start of October, and then you don't go into rehearsal for studio till the beginning of November, a month later. During that time, have you actually been paying attention to what the other directors are doing, or just focused on your own script?
I went to Pennant's studio, and obviously to see the spaceship interior set, obviously to see that, and to see what roughly to see what Pennant was doing. For the most part, no. For the most part, I wasn't particularly involved. I didn't involve myself with the way Pennant was doing his episode. No.
Because when you go to studio, we had more cast members. So Margaret John as the Arbiter, Robert James as Van Glint, Susan Field as Alta Morag, and Peter Williams. So it's a huge supporting cast in this story, probably the biggest supporting cast any episode gets. And amongst those are lots of women, and women with strength of character, strength of position, an arbiter, a prosecutor. They're all playing important roles. Blake 7 isn't known for doing that. And I believe that some of those women, some of those were actually written as men, and you changed to women. So certainly the Arbiter was a man originally, and you cast a woman in that role.
Yeah, I think I've seen this story that I changed the Arbiter into a woman, but I'm not sure that's true. I think it may have been David, or it may have been Chris. It could be true, but I have no memory of it whatsoever.
Do you have any other memories that you can remember from that first story?
For example, the camera it was quite interesting. I think it was the beginning of this sort of problem with visual effects and the director's office. For example, there's a camera which one of the characters uses in order to film the dead bodies in the tunnel, in order to be able to have evidence that there was a massacre down there. And I ordered, so part of the list, but visual effects never talked to me about the camera. And when I went to look at the items, because I think I went down to their department or whatever to look at the props that they were going to provide for the filming, because I wanted it, I wanted it to be right. They presented a camera that was this big. I mean, it was like a modern day camera. And I went, no, that's no good. They went, I said, I want something this size with a little screen on it. And they eventually provided that. And with the film cameraman, Nigel, who I worked with, the operator who was Nigel, we actually did those shots as inlay shots, like you would in sort of old-fashioned feature film days. We inlaid it on location by exposing part of the screen. It was the beginning that you would give visual effects a list of spaceship shots that you wanted. I mean, this is particularly true of the web rather than way back, but you'd give them a list of the spaceship shots that you wanted, and leave them to it, because there's simply physically, with everything there was to do, there wasn't time to go along to. You also weren't invited, and you didn't want to go along to model shooting. Typically, you didn't go along to shooting models because it's a long, laborious job, and provided you and the person you've instructed are on the same wavelength, then why go there and stand there while they're busy doing model shots? And you would discover after the recording that they hadn't shot half the material that you'd asked for. They'd done their own list of what visual effects shots they thought the show needed, but they hadn't done yours. And you'd be going, where's the shot of? And they go, no, there wasn't time for that. And you go, what do you mean there wasn't time for that? I've got this, you've shot this material, which there was time for, but where's the shot that I requested? And they go, no, this is stock stuff that we... So the way back was just the beginning inklings that the problems between design and direction were embryonic.
What was the chemistry between the main cast that you recall? Were they excited about the prospect of this new TV series?
Pennant had them first, of course. Because Pennant's episode was recorded first, was it?
It was, yes.
Yeah. So Pennant had them first. So I picked them up second. They were thrilled, excited, thrilled. They wanted it to be good. They wanted to be good in it. There was a certain degree, even at, well, in my episode, in the way back, of course, I really only had Gareth, because the others, Michael, Keating, the others, Sally, and Yvette, really only appeared at the very, very end.
Right at the end.
The way back. And it was like one scene in the prison, and it was sort of in the prison cell. So that wasn't greatly involved, but we all thought, I think everybody working on it thought, I think mainly on the basis of the way back script and maybe Pennant's story, that really what we were doing was something actually quite original, quite good, quite clever, and actually worth taking trouble over. It was, it had a feeling that it was going to be a good show, and we all wanted to do it as well as we possibly could. So certainly the cast were excited by it, and for many of them, it was a great opportunity. There was fairly quickly the problem that you had all these characters in search of a script, which became more and more true as the first series evolved.
For that was really great once again to talk to you. We'll actually have a fuller interview where we can actually talk to him at greater length about all his other directing work as well. That'll be a special episode that will be on in a couple of weeks' time. You can view in and watch about his whole career. Anyway, that's part one of this episode. Let's talk about the second part. Blake's now been captured and he's unconscious, and we now move into the whole courtroom drama scenes, and we meet some of his lawyers. What do people think about this second part of the episode?
Well, I was really quite surprised at what he ended up being charged with. I thought, because I'm putting myself back into 1978 when it was first aired, and I just thought, wow, that's quite heavy stuff for him to be charged with, to be sent off. What was it, sexual abuse and all that kind of thing. I thought that was quite wild, to be honest. Yeah,
I agree with you, Chris.
Yeah,
like I was really quite surprised the first time I watched it. I thought, oh my goodness, this is going out for 1978,
yeah.
But also at the same time, having Blake been viewed on a screen by the different lawyers, and then the prosecutor and the doctor and the arbiter general, having them then actually discuss getting rid of him, shipping him off world, and coming up with that, it really sort of took me by surprise that this is this Federation. Like, I kind of went, oh my goodness, like these are not nice people at all. So I can see why he was once a rebel leader, and how is he going to get out of this?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because they could have just killed him, and in fact, you've just had a massacre, killed all these rebels, and yet there's this whole political intrigue we move into of a bunch of very intelligent intelligentsia of the Federation sitting around discussing how can we do the most damage. And the thing is, they just do not care about anybody else along the way, because what they're doing in terms of him and for his reputation. It's interesting actually, because there's a lot of other things which in the 1970s would have been criminal or very negatively viewed. They actually chose something that continues today. Like there's still probably, like back then, few worse things you can do than in terms of damaging a child and abusing a child. And so they've managed to find something that 45 years later is viewed equally repulsively in our society, which is a good thing. But it's interesting that they chose a topic like that. But to me, it's the callousness of the fact that they are mentally altering these children, believing for all their lives that that's what's happened to them, because there's no idea that they'll actually put them back in and take these memories away from them. They've implanted these memories into these kids to last forever. So not only are they destroying Blake and his life, and they want to totally discredit him and destroy him, they're also damaging and destroying these kids, which is just horrific.
Yeah, psychological manipulation is certainly a theme that goes hand in hand with the Federation throughout Blake 7. Like, there's characters that'll come back who are, I don't want to spoil it for Chris because he hasn't seen it, but they are very involved with manipulating psychology of people, and they come back in as the series goes on. So just out of curiosity, the guy that plays Glind, who is the one of the ones that came up with the idea, is Robert James, who the year before this had a role in The Mask of Mandragora. So he played the High Priest in The Mask of Mandragora, and he also played Lesterson in The Power of the Daleks. So he's had 2 other roles in Doctor Who. So just out of curiosity, so
I'm surprised you say that of course he did, Philip, because I was taken out of that scene entirely when I saw him, because I went, oh my goodness, he's the deputy priest to Hieronymus from The Mask of Mandragora. Yeah. And those couches that they're sitting on look like they're from the Invasion of Time in Gallifrey. Right?
Robots of Death, yeah.
Or Robots of Death. I was just sort of, the Doctor Who things just jump at me. So I sort of get distracted from, what's actually going on. But I thought it was really interesting that Morag, the only female in the room, is the one that really sets the scene of what they can do to get rid of Blake. I thought it was really interesting coming from a woman to begin with and actually saying, oh yes, let's do this. And then she ends up being the prosecutor rather than from one of the men per se. Like, I just thought that was really interesting.
It was a fear of that particular time of regimes like this. The Cold War was raging back then, and particularly China. We had movies like The Manchurian Candidate, where people's mentality was being manipulated for certain things. So there was a fear of this in the general public. So this would have hit home with audiences watching this at the time of a really dictatorial regime that people would have been able to kind of relate to through their own fear of what was going on back then in 1978 as well.
Which is sort of happening again in some parts of the world right now, kind of.
For the first time when I viewed this, actually, I saw a bit of a Christological idea behind it, in terms of the idea of Blake a bit like a Christ, in terms of you've got his disciples, the followers, who end up all being killed. You've got the Pharisees sitting around plotting his death and wanting to accuse him of a false crime, and then ideally leading to his death. But you've got those sort of themes behind a lot of the Bible stories, which seem to be coming up in this episode. So I don't know how much. Terry Nation himself wasn't a believer at all, but he would have, no doubt, as a kid, gone to Sunday school and those sort of stories. And a lot of the conversations being had in different rooms are a lot like the conversations were had in the Gospels, between the Pharisees, between the elders of the law, between the teachers, taking him off to trial. There's a lot of very similar Christological ideas in this, which I don't know how strong it is, but it really struck me this time watching it that a lot of those groups are pretty deceitful, and a false crime being accused or there as well.
Hadn't thought of that before, but it makes sense.
I think it's also very interesting that then the whole prison cell and the court are all very white, all very pure, and having the arbiter and the defense lawyer and Morag all come in, and it's all. Well, I actually thought it reminded me a bit of the courtroom scenes from the Keys of Marinus, where you've actually have the judge, jury, and executioner, but this time they're just crystal balls and they flash, and they obviously, everything's just weighed up and you don't hear all the cases. They're already fait accompli. I thought that was really interesting, rather than just having a courtroom drama where people are trying to, this is for the defense and laying out all the prosecution and all this sort of stuff. I thought it was very, futuristic.
Well, it's very AI, isn't it?
Yes.
Here's all the information for the prosecution. Here's all the information for the defense. The computer, the AI, weighs up all the information and decides guilt. It's it's very much where we're heading now. And I think lots of people would much rather move to AI than juries in terms of being able to determine what the evidence really shows.
Can I just jump in there with another Doctor Who reference? Actress who played the Arbiter has also appeared in Doctor Who twice. And she has one of the longest stints between appearances. 38 years apart were her two appearances in Doctor Who. Does anyone know what they were?
I can't think of either one.
Her name is Margaret John, and she first appeared in Fury from the Deep. She was Megan Jones. No, she's not the wife. She's the guy that comes in as the boss about halfway through the story.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, and she plays, not that you see her face too much, but she plays the grandmother in the Idiot's Lantern.
Oh my goodness!
Wow,
that's a good pickup.
That's her. Wow,
I would never.
The one who has their face wiped off.
That's the one.
Oh wow,
that's
goodness. But again, I found it really interesting, the fact that she, as the arbiter, was a woman. I know that seems really strange, but for that time, having the prosecutor and her speaking roles, I'm used to Doctor Who, mid-70s, where it's basically the Doctor's companion and maybe, you might get one other female. Already we've had 3 significant females speaking roles and in positions of power in this episode.
It really is a power force of women, which at the time was not common at all. And these are great speaking roles for women, which is, exciting. We'll see if it lasts. Anyone think, why on earth does Tarrant appear as Blake is blacking out? Is there any purpose in that scene whatsoever, do you think?
Well, just so that he's seen him again, I think.
Brings it up to his lawyer later, says, I saw him as I was blacking out. There's something about him.
And we get the whole flashback sequence again with
him remembering,
Yeah, I don't know. It's basically, I think, for plot effect rather than making plot sense. Because,
Well,
like, you know,
I thought it was. I thought he was gloating. He's gotten away with it, so he's come out of hiding now, just as he's being taken over, and he's going to prison now. He's being found guilty. There's no way out of it. So he's coming out of hiding, gloating, because he doesn't care. Blake knows now. So yeah, who cares?
There's a few times it feels like Terry Nation has put out some seeds, planning to pick them up later. And this feels like maybe it was going to be a seed later on that they're going to go back and find him or have an episode with him. But it just never happens. So I do wonder how much Terry doesn't really know what he's going to do long term. And so he plants things along the way with the possibility of maybe picking it up. And this sort of feels like one of those possibilities. Big Finish will pick it up, by the way. Big Finish does.
I was going to say that.
His story, and we do have some follow-on stories from Tarrant and what happens next with Tarrant. But we'll discuss it later.
Horse Big Finish too. No stone left unturned. They probably pick up. Are they going to pick up that woman in the next scene? That's that great extra that's screaming, "Let me go! Let me go! Let me go! Let me go! They need her story told.
I actually do. I do want to know what happens to her. Yes. Where is she going? Where's she being taken to? What's happened to her?
Because she's making her mark. My God, she's going to deliver those lines, and she does it well.
Well, Blake's now in jail and locked up, but while his story is sort of put on hold, we follow the story of Varen and Marja as they sort of work out what's going on next. What do people think in terms of this whole sort of new plot strand happening in terms of the investigation into is Blake guilty or not?
Well, it was an interesting choice for the scene, wasn't it, where they were having that discussion. Well, it wasn't just plain exposition. We have a bit of kissy-kissy going in the middle of it as well. So it was this episode's got a bit of everything.
Because we're adults, that we can have a love scene between people, not like our other show, Doctor Who, that we know and love from that time. But
I guess that's what threw me as a kid, because I was still a teenager when I saw this for the first time. It's like, this looks like Doctor Who, but they're doing stuff that isn't Doctor Who, and that just always stuck in my mind as something that was really weird.
And the BBC used to love having scenes with couples in beds at this stage. There was always discussions and conversations and exposition in bed. In most TV shows, it was married couple, you put them in bed together so they could talk about what's going on in the world.
I think it's really interesting that this defense lawyer, Baron, decides to investigate, because all through the trial process and talking to Blake is very adamant, it's all the setup and everything like that. But he doesn't, to me, really give away that he's questioning what's going on. All of us, he's very much, my job is to be the defense lawyer and this is my job. And then it's only when he turns up to his wife that they have that conversation, and you suddenly realize that he's going to question this. Not saying that it comes out of nowhere, but it's interesting that suddenly there's this focus, which I wasn't expecting. Like, I just thought he's just doing his job and he's just going to comply because that's the Federation, and you just don't go and question these things. So I think it's quite interesting that he's got a little bit of autonomy in himself to do this, and he's never questioned any other charges ever before, and puts himself in a very difficult situation. If he's usually this sort of thinks about things and people, Blake would not be the first person that they've done trumped up charges on.
No, but he's the most important. I think they're trying to say that he's the most important. But I also thought when Tarrant came out, I thought that the lawyer was watching Tarrant and was watching Blake as he was falling, and I thought, oh, is he watching both of them and realizing, oh, maybe that's the guy that he saw that he was talking about earlier? That's how I read it as well.
I think in part he realizes that he's not that good a lawyer and he shouldn't have got this case. I think he does realize it is a huge case, and maybe he shouldn't have got something as big as this, and maybe, as much as he wanted to do his best job for Blake in terms of defense, he always believed he was guilty. And even at this stage, I think he still believes Blake's guilty, but his wife's sort of saying, well, let's just confirm it. Let's just do a little bit of probing, and just to put your mind at ease that no, what's happened is actually just. Because so they're going out to prove him that he was right, that Blake was guilty.
It could also be Terry Nation saying that, we've had this sort of, not that he was saying AI at the time, but we've referred to the computer making the judgment, is that you don't have that human intuition, and that human intuition still is important in some cases in terms of justice, real justice. That may be the message he was trying to get across too.
What a really lovely couple Terry's created in this married couple, that you warm to them instantly. That they start in bed, they go to, but this is a couple who trust each other, who have a lovely relationship, who are open and honest, who trust the Federation, they trust the system they're under. They're not going to try and destroy the Federation. They just want to make sure that justice has been done, and they're convinced that if something's been incorrectly done, then it will be sorted out. Like they really believe in the system. They've got this naivety, which you kind of really love, and your heart really goes out to this couple as they go on their journey.
And of course, Chris, it's Blake 7, so people that you know and love, what's going to happen?
Oh, yeah, that was a bit of a surprise at the end as well. I was a bit, oh, wow, okay. Yeah, that was a bit of a shock.
It's brutal, but it does sum up the regime. But it's really interesting that I think Terry Nation takes us on this journey where they go and investigate the public's records computer and bring up all the sort of the school attendance records and what what was classified on that day, and they have to try and bribe the guard. Again, I'm going back to Terry Nation's Caesar Marinus when the doctor's investigating. If you know that story, when Ian's on trial and they have to do investigations and they're going to speak to people, and Tell goes and talks to Glyn, and then he overhears a conversation and realizes that he doesn't mention tunnels. It's a sort of a Terry Nation thing where people mention things that they don't know. Or
that's the Keys of Marinus too, isn't it? So that she mentioned.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
This is exactly the same trope.
And then they're going to do some investigation, and they end up going outside and crossing the stream and going into the tunnel to find the bodies. They find the bodies that have been there for how long? Can I ask?
I would have thought the stench would have been. They walked up with no. I thought the stench alone would have been enough to. There should have been some acting there, but yeah, I did wonder about the bodies as well. How long they'd been there.
I like the terminology too. He says, "I'll take some picture tapes." Very contemporary. Love it.
Yeah, but it's sort of a handheld video camera. I mean, it was an idea of where we could be. I mean, nowadays we just whip out our phone and film like that. Yeah. They had a sort of camcorder thing, but it was still a much smaller version than what they were using in the studio, which were these massive cameras. So they were thinking ahead and realizing things might get smaller.
Yep.
Well, it's like the public records guy who's listening to his Walkman,
but he's also talking to Siri to bring up the records.
Yeah, it's all these concepts that we see now and how they're done now. But Terry has integrated, whether it be by design or just by serendipity, they've got these workings here, but they're working with the technology of the time to show what the future's like. Yes, we've got Siri. Yes, we've got our Walkman. Yes, we've got our videotape thing or whatever we called it, and it will all be different now. But he still had that in his head as a vision of the future, which I think is quite amazing, really.
It is. Yeah.
Can I jump back to the computer records room for a second?
Yeah,
because we have another Doctor Who actor appearing there.
Is he from the Sunmakers, or am I wrong?
No, he's not from the Sunmakers.
Oh, okay.
He is. His name is Nigel Lambert, and he played Harden in the Leisure Hive.
Oh my goodness,
God!
But not only that, he has also appeared in Doctor Who more recently. He played a character called Priest Triangles, was his name, in stories that I'll probably never watch again: War of the Sontarans and Once Upon Time, part of the Flux series. So he was in that too. He's been in a bunch of big finishes as well: The Four Doctors, Thin Ice, Guardians of Prophecy, The Cannibalists. He's been in a Benny Summerfield as well. So he's done quite a bit in the Doctor Who universe. But yeah, so his face you recognise immediately from something, and it's the Leisure Hive.
Well, I got it wrong, but you know what? We're going to play this game every episode, Dwayne. Where was this guy from in Doctor Who?
We'll just finish off their story. So, having got all the information, everything's looking positive. They think they can clear Blake. I guess the final shot, and I said there's some other action happening at the same time. When Blake thinks he might be about to escape, everything looks hopeful, and they just have their two dead bodies on the ground. It's just this tragic. It's interesting. They don't show them being shot. They don't show them being killed. It's just the inevitability that you cross the Federation. Doesn't matter how important you are, how good you are. You cross the Federation, you're just dead. And the choice not to show their deaths, I think, is a really powerful one. Just the fact that there's just people having a conversation and the camera pans down and there their bodies are.
I think it's very good writing. And whether that's Wooly Terry or the script editor Chris Boucher, who knows? But certainly between them, they've certainly, I agree with you, like that is it's a very modern thing to do, like rather than show every single little bit.
Well, anyhow, while they're doing all the investigation, we've got a second plot going on with Blake, in terms of Blake's now in jail. In some ways, this is a minor storyline, even though it's going to introduce some important people to us. What do people think about those whole prison scenes?
I think it's actually quite clever that we're subtly introducing two of our regulars, Villa and Jenna, in these sequences without necessarily knowing that they're going to be regulars. And we don't get to see all the regulars this episode, which again really surprised me when I first watched it. I kind of thought we'd all be up and running by this point, And it's funny that it's like, we had a couple at the beginning, we had a couple investigating at the end. We sort of had the prosecutor and the defense couple, and now we've got these two that do all the talking in the jail. Are they going to end up the same fate of the others? It's all these different pairings of people.
I thought there was a hint of maybe Jenna being a love interest to Blake. I got that a bit. I thought, oh, here we go. Here's a love interest for him. She'll probably be killed next episode. Yeah, but that doesn't seem to have gone anywhere at all. So I don't know if that was meant to be part of it at some point. I did read, interestingly, that Avon was meant to be in this scene. In one of the last scenes, he was meant to be the character that says to Blake, "Take a last look at the Earth," or something. That's the last you'll ever see of it. I read that was actually meant to be Avon, or in the original script.
Of course, we get the character in this, the only character in this episode who appears in every episode of Blake 7, and that's Villa. So he's the only one.
Yeah. It's really good that he set up straight away to be a thief, right? And then, but Jenna, subtly says,
"What's the time?"
She's a smuggler. They're actually given some kind of character trait. It was interesting. I was looking at the ages of people, and Gareth Thomas, who plays Blake, is 32 at the time, and Michael Keating playing Villa is 30, and Sally, who plays Jenna, is only 26. So she's the youngest of the regular cast.
So reading through the cast descriptions, they're all attractive men, but a stunningly beautiful young woman is the description given for Jenna. So the expectation is that they're always going to hire good-looking people, but the women have to be stunningly beautiful and young. And so Sally Nevette was certainly cast for that reason, and she fulfills it very well, I must say. She was stunningly beautiful. Fortunately, she can act as well.
I love it when they get into the spaceship and they've got all of those office chairs all lined up as the chairs that they're going to be in for the journey for the next 8 months. It's very creative. It's very futuristic. I just had to smile.
And just the single line there that Jenna looks out into space and says, "Oh, I wish someone was out there looking after me." Just that line opens it up for all these possibilities down the track. Unfortunately, in those days, female cast didn't get served quite as well as they could have been, but there was potential there for that character. And of course, Big Finish one day grabs that and runs with it.
Taking what you're saying, Dwayne, as well, I really like the relationship between her and Blake instantly. There just seems to be an instant, even in these few scenes, an instant, she likes him, maybe she trusts him, there's a bond there, I don't know if you other guys feel this way, but I just felt there was a bit of a connection.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. It's interesting because, as I said, when I first saw this, because it was part of the the 4 episodes are thrown into one videotape. Not much of this episode survives, and so all those scenes with Villa and Jenna aren't in the original on that Compodium tape, nor any of the lawyer scenes. They're all gone as well. So the things they cut out, and so I still watch this episode and see those scenes with Villa and Jenna, and they're still fresh to me because they still don't feel. Cause I don't know how many dozens of times I must have watched the first tape. These still feel fresh. And the thing is, Jenna and Villa are both being written so well. Villa's a lot. He's going to become a lot more of a clown figure and comedy figure. But at this stage, he's very hard-bitten and cynical. And Jenna is, self-assured and confident and very much in charge. In some ways, she's a lot more confident than Blake is. I mean, Blake's the one who's desperate, thinking, hoping to get out. Both Villa and Jenna resigned to the fact that, no, this is where they're heading. I do think it's a shame she's the only woman aboard. I don't know how much this is supposed to reflect, convict life and being sent off to the colonies in Australia, but at least they did, they deliberately sent a lot of innocent women with the men. So there's a reasonable number here. The fact that Paul Jenner's the only woman in this cell about to go off makes it a bit hard for her.
Maybe that's something that when he was writing, having written the next episode, backtracked and said, we'll make her the only woman for plot points that are coming up.
Yeah. And once again, it's generally harder to kill women, though Terry Nation doesn't seem to have had any problems in this episode killing off.
Not in the slightest. Not in the slightest.
Yeah.
I was going to say Villa.
BBC times.
I was going to say Villa. Of course, his cowardice hasn't come out yet. He seems a bit more self-assured in this. His character changes slightly over future episodes, or we just get to know him better.
What's interesting about this episode, this was filmed second, so they actually filmed this episode first. So Spacefall, that we're going to look at next month, was the first filmed episode. And so Jenna and Villa have both played their character for an episode before coming back in here. And yet they actually play them, I think, maybe not so much Jenna, but Villa certainly plays his character differently in this episode than he does in the following episode, where he's more of a bit of a bumbling fool, which we'll see next time. But back here, he seems so much more self-assured, much more confident, the better thief. So it's interesting that having played him a particular way in the first episode, he's gone back and he's playing him quite differently. I wonder if this is Michael Keating kind of saying, this is actually that's not the direction I want to take. I want to take this direction, and hoping that this was the way that they'd write him in future. Though that wasn't to be.
It's interesting you say that. I never knew that. So I would never have guessed that the next episode was the first one filmed.
No, I just think they're all very good actors, though. I mean, in Doctor Who, it's a bit hit and miss sometimes, but I think all of these actors are actually quite good and get the characters across to us very, very well.
Can I just say that I do 99% agree, but there's a few points in this episode where I feel that Gareth Thomas is a little bit... I don't quite believe him at a few points where he... I don't know. Not in large sequences, but when he cries out in angst, or there was a few moments where I just kind of thought, oh, that's a little bit over the top, or I wouldn't have played it like that.
I can't remember. I can't remember.
There was just a few moments where I just kind of went, oh, that's a bit acting school 101.
His Royal Shakespeare Company training does appear at different points. He also can't run. The way he runs is bizarre.
I hadn't noticed that.
He throws his arms quite interestingly, doesn't he?
It's a sort of interesting run. Chris, do you know some stuff about Gareth Thomas?
Yes. So he was born 12th of February 1945 in Brentford, England, and he grew up in Aberystwyth, Wales. I hope I've said that correctly. He actually, even though he was born in England, he identified more with his Welsh heritage. He attended the King's School in Canterbury, Kent, which is the oldest public school in Britain. He trained at RADA. He performed with the Royal Shakespeare Company, and despite being renowned for his stage work, this was his best-known role as Blake in Blake 7. He's made many TV appearances, including The Avengers, not the Marvel version, Children of the Stones, Coronation Street, Z-Cars, Bergerac, Casualty, Taggart, Heartbeat, Torchwood, etc. He was nominated for a BAFTA twice, Stocks Cooper in 1971 and Morgan's Boy in 1984, which he considered to be his favourite role. He was married 3 times, had 2 children from his first marriage, and he passed away in 2016.
Interesting, his Torchwood role, I'm not sure if people remember that, but he actually played a child molester.
In what, sorry?
The Torchwood.
In Torchwood.
Oh, right,
actually
yes.
Yes. He played a child molester.
I remember that episode. I didn't know it was him at the time, but I remember that episode, yeah.
He's very creepy. Very creepy.
Yeah, it was yeah.
I think in many ways he was a thespian and loved his he loved his Shakespeare and his Royal Shakespeare Company performances. And I think we do sometimes see that. Once again, TV is still fairly early at this point, and I think a lot of actors moving from the stage to TV still have trouble working out how to make your performance smaller. I think one of the reasons why William Hartnell was good as the Doctor was he knew how big the screen was, and he always made sure he was in screen, but he always brought his performances down. So he was such a good television actor with those early cameras. And yeah, I see what Todd's saying. Sometimes I think Roger's a bit over the top with his performance.
There was just a couple of moments where I kind of went, "Oh, that's a choice of the 1970s acting." I'm not trying to say that he was terrible. I'm just saying, like, there was a couple of points where I just kind of went, "Oh, really? That's the choice we're making."
I was having a look at what other British sci-fi was around at the time. Because I couldn't think of much. I know there was plenty of American stuff out there that was going on through the 60s and 70s and 80s. But here's a few. You mentioned Children of the Stones, which also starred Gareth Thomas. That was a children's sci-fi, which was really good as well.
Yep.
But in 1978, we had, around 1978, we had Sapphire and Steel, which started in 1979, Space 1999. I didn't realise it was so late. I thought it was earlier, 1975 to 77. The Tomorrow People was still going at this time. That went from 73 to 79. Survivors went from 75 to 77. And the Quatermass Conclusion, which was a mini-series, I think I first saw it when it was released as a film. That was 1979. So not a great deal of British sci-fi going on in the 70s at all.
I mean, that's interesting you say that, because a number of those things concluded before Blake 7, so it was really only Doctor Who and Blake 7 on the screen at this time, and a couple of those are just afterwards, which obviously means there's probably a reaction to Blake 7 coming on screen and Star Wars and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, very interesting. Philip, at the beginning of the episode, you said you give this 10 out of 10. I'm not going to give this 10 out of 10. I probably would give it 8 out of 10. But I'm willing to revise that upwards depending on how my rewatch goes of this series. But I think it's solid. I think it's really good. But is it my favourite thing ever? Maybe not.
Yeah, can I say I'm thinking about revising my 10 down to a 9 after this discussion. So maybe I should have given myself a mark at the very beginning. What about other scores for people?
For me, I was actually going to go with about an 8 as well. I'm giving myself a bit of leeway because I actually I've watched it a few times now. I like it more on I like it more as I've watched it over and over. It's still not my favorite, but I think it is, again, a solid episode, and I think it was paced very well. So I'd say an 8.
Yeah, I'm revising scores in my head as I go too, because I'm also thinking about episodes to come, which I might appreciate more. But I think for an opening episode, I'm going to be generous. I think I'll give this a 9 out of 10. It's not perfect, but I think for a Terry Nation script, and I'm not the biggest Terry Nation fan, I think it does a lot of things, and it sets up the series really, really well. The series isn't completely set up yet. It's only sort of the start of the setup. Doesn't really get set up for another few episodes. I think 9 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, and having discussed with you, I'm going to drop mine down to a 9 as well. So you've spoiled it for my episode for no, it's okay.
Sorry,
I'll forgive you. Play of the week, in terms of if you were going to name who do you think is the most important part of this episode, be it someone, the creative behind the scenes, or someone on stage, who would you give the player of this episode to?
The director, I think. I'll give it to the director. I think it was his job to put it all together, and yeah.
Well, there's three people I'm thinking of. The director, Gareth Thomas, because ultimately you have to like that character, or Terry Nation, because, you know, he wrote the thing. So it's very hard. One of those three. You know, Michael has to get the performance, has to bring the script together, has to get all those elements. So I'm going with Michael.
Yeah, it's really tough, isn't it? Because we haven't mentioned David Maloney at all throughout this, who was the producer, who we know better from Doctor Who as a director, but he would have had a big part to play in the casting of this as well. I think he does a great job in getting the cast together. Chris has already mentioned it, so his choices still stand up today. I've mentioned David Maloney, but I've got a real new appreciation for Michael E. Briant. There you go. I'll give it to him.
There you go. I'm going to go to Gareth Thomas. I think the show's named after him. It was going to rise or fall in his performance. I think being a credible child molester, it was a really hard thing to take on, but the show's going to ultimately ride on his back. And let's face it, further on, for those who know where we're heading, he won't get it very often because there's another actor who's going to come and really overshadow his performances and really take the show out from under him when Avon appears. That's what I'm talking about. Anyhow, so I'm giving this today to Gareth Thomas. Well, thank you for joining us on our journey on Blake 7 The Way Back as we watched The Way Back. Won't get to say that again. I hope you've enjoyed the episode as much as we have. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me, and good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
See you soon.
Next time on Blake 7 The Way Back.
This is Sally Navette.
What was your opinion of the scripts?
Well, to begin with, I thought they were pretty good. Again, because I didn't have the knowledge of how to make a scriptwriter write for me. More and more frustrated, as I think is been well documented, that I became more and more of a sex symbol. I wanted to be this intergalactic space pirate and feisty woman who could do all the special effects like Sigourney Weaver. And every time anything dramatic happened, the boys would take over. But I suddenly feel there's so much potential for Jenna now. All the things I was frustrated about in the old days, I now think she can do.
Thanks for joining us on Blake 7 The Way Back, starring Todd Bilby, Chris Beer, Dwayne Bunny and Philip Edney, with special guest Michael Briant. Original theme by Joe Kramer. This episode 1, yes, we finally got there, The Way Back, released in August 2025. It was recorded on the lands of the Wallumedegal, Wurundjeri, Kanamalaka and Jurok nations, also known as Sydney, Melbourne, and somewhere in Tasmania. No one really knows where. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a comment. And please pass it on to your friends. Join us next time for episode 2, Spacefall, with special guest Sally Navette.